Welcome back to the Hannahcast YouTube channel, and today I'm going to be reacting to the British Society of Cinematographers nominations. The cinematography race just keeps getting crazier and crazier. I'm going to be later on reacting to the American Society of Cinematographers nominations, and I think it's going to be Monday. The ceremony was pushed due to the wildfires in California. My heart goes out to those affected. Since the Critics' Choice Awards are not going to be airing this Sunday, they've been postponed. I am going to be instead doing a live stream talking about the state of the Oscar race as of now, or I guess as of tomorrow, because that's when the PGA nominations come out, which that will be a separate video. But yeah, that day at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to be doing a live stream so we can all talk about what's going on with the Oscars right now, like what's happening. And admittedly, I'm not sure what I'm going to do about BAFTA nominations, because like I need to get those out, but at the same time, Writers Guild nominations haven't come out, the American Society of Cinematographers nominations haven't come out, the Visual Effects Society nominations have not come out yet, so maybe I'll try to post them like within the next couple days or something, or who knows, because voting is technically already done, so it's like it's not like these can actually influence what's going on at BAFTA. But still, let's talk about the British Society of Cinematographers nominations, shall we? The nominees for cinematography in a feature film are Conclave, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, Nosferatu, and The Brutalist. This has thrown a lot of wrenches in the mix because there's no A Complete Unknown, there's no Maria, there's no Girl with the Needle, which I was kind of expecting. What do I do here? And I even tried doing the math. All right, I was doing the math. When you compare the American Society of Cinematographers with the British Society of Cinematographers, they are very close and correlating with the Oscars, but ASC does just barely edge out the British Society of Cinematographers, at least within the past decade. I try to keep it within the decade because I feel like that's the most relevant, but still, they are pretty close. Given the math, I do want to lean closer to what ASC does, but still, if I just kept my nominations as they are, I would literally only have 2 out of the 5 films at BSC getting nominated for the Oscar. And within the past decade, that just doesn't happen. I had to figure out, okay, what's happening? A Brutalist is easily happening. I currently have that winning. But I'm going to pull the trigger on Nosferatu. I'm going to do it. I'll have Nosferatu in, which granted, I did have that in for a while, ever since it's been becoming very clear that Nickel Boys is just not happening. If Nickel Boys gets into ASC, oh my god, it's chaos, it's absolute chaos. But still, I'm putting in The Brutalist and I'm putting in Nosferatu. A Complete Unknown, I have been saying it's going to get in at the Oscars for cinematography. The moment I found out who the cinematographer was, the director of photography, which is the same person that did the cinematography for Trial of the Chicago 7, I was like, oh, this film's getting in now. It's getting in for cinematography. And the reason why I mention that, because people are going to go, well, that was just because it was a weak year. Really? If it was such a weak year, how come Trial of Chicago 7, before the Oscars, only had ASC? It only had ASC as a precursor. Not one single critics group nominated it. Like, everyone else was doing stuff like Tenet, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, or Da 5 Bloods, or The Midnight Sky. There were options. No one went for Trial of Chicago 7 except for ASC. That tells me they like this guy. They like the cinematography. They like the way he shoots movies. Why should I doubt A Complete Unknown? Especially given that it's a lot more showy with its cinematography. We have the stage lights and the silhouettes. I mean, my god, this is like cinematography bait right here. Especially with how well of a guild sweep it's doing right now. Like, my god, it's getting into Art Directors Guild. It's swept the SAG nominations. My god, SAG loved it. And even in the BAFTA shortlist, A Complete Unknown got costume design and editing over The Brutalist. Alright, this is going to be a big player of some sort. And I just have to assume that cinematography is going to come along with it. And I've been saying that ever since this movie was announced to be coming out in 2024. I knew it from the start, and I'm not backing down from it now. But it's not nominated at BSC, so that does hurt it a bit. Well, I also have Maria, but Maria is really tough because that's also not here at BSC, but I've said from the get-go, never doubt Edward Lockman. I initially was going for him for El Conde, but then when it dropped on Netflix and nobody watched it, I was like, okay, well, it's probably dead now. And then out of nowhere, ASC happened, and El Conde got in. Then I was like, why did I doubt him from the start? I put El Conde back in, whereas everyone else was doing what the BAFTAs exactly did. Now, granted, I didn't go 5 out of 5 with the Oscars. I did try to predict the zone of interest at the expense of, I think it was either Maestro or Killers of the Flower Moon, which that wasn't great, but still, I did predict El Conde, so technically I still got more points than most people. Because I was like, don't doubt Edward Lockman. They like this guy. And why would they nominate El Conde for cinematography at the ASC if they weren't going to repeat it at the Oscars? However, I also had The Girl with the Needle, and that's also not here at BSC. Again, you have this international black and white film, and when you look at the trailer, it's like begging to be nominated for cinematography. I mean, look at it, my God. But it's not here. So, like, what do? I can't go 2 out of 5 with BSC. They don't do that. So I have to bump something out. And I'm not going to bank on the idea that A Complete Unknown, which is already doing very well with guilds right now, and Maria, who has a very established cinematographer behind the camera, I'm not going to take the bet that those two aren't getting in the Oscar. I will have to go with The Girl with the Needle. Now, apparently The Girl with the Needle is also not ASC eligible, but it might get the Spotlight Award. Now, I've kind of put Conclave in the top 5, which granted, for me, doesn't really make a lot of sense, because the cinematography in Conclave doesn't really stand out that much. For me, I would put in Dune Part 2, but Dune Part 2 is already showing itself to be weaker than the first film. Not even getting in a DGA, not even getting a director nomination at the Golden Globes. It completely blanked at the Makeup and Hairstyling Guild, and it's not like Nosferatu or Waltzing with Brando, where those movies were such late releases to where, like, they probably just didn't see the movies. No, Dune's been out forever and they just didn't nominate it. So it's like, okay, Dune 2 is just weaker than the first film. That's kind of why I have to put in Conclave. It doesn't make sense to me, but if Dune Part 2 is doing this badly with guilds already, and sure, yeah, it did get in here, it could probably still get snubbed down the line. Like, the whole sentiment around Dune Part 2 within award season this year is that we kind of already awarded the first Dune. You know, we gave it 6 Oscars. We don't need to do it again. And it doesn't make sense to me because it's like everything about this one's literally better than the first film. But, however, knowing that logic, I do want to go with the film that is probably considered more fresh and more new with Conclave, and this will probably have to be like a Tar-like nomination where the cinematography doesn't stand out to me at all, but because there's already like sequels and reboots and stuff like with the Batman and Top Gun Maverick, like they didn't want to go with any of those films, so they just went with the film that had the more new cinematography, and so I'm going with Conclave, which would put me at 3 out of 5 with the British Society of Cinematographers. But again, I really want to see what ASC does, because if Maria can't even get into ASC, oh, it's in trouble. Then the Edward Lockman stat breaks, because that means it will have no Critics' Choice nomination, no British Society of Cinematographers nomination, and it's not even longlisted at BAFTA, which granted, some people will probably go, well, I mean, if it's not longlisted at BAFTA, why are you still going with Maria? Well, neither was El Conde. Again, I'm just waiting to see what the American Society of Cinematographers do. Oh, and there's also Emilia Perez that we need to talk about, alright? The fact that Emilia Perez showed up here is pretty big. That might also be in contention for like the newer cinematography, but the problem with that, I don't know, maybe, I don't know if it's just my own opinion getting into it. I can maybe see how people would see the cinematography in Conclave and view it as like, oh, it looks like a painting. Oh my God, it looks beautiful. But with Emilia Perez, I mean, other than the El Mal sequence, which does have some great cinematography, Emilia Perez doesn't really have anything else going for it. Like, I'd be kind of surprised if it actually got into the Oscars. If it got into BAFTA and ASC, okay, well then Emilia Perez is in. I'm gonna go with this 5 for the cinematography Oscar right now. Brutalist is winning, followed by A Complete Unknown, Nosferatu, Maria, and Conclave. Who knows? Maybe ASC will change everything, but right now I do want to go 3 out of 5 with the British Society of Cinematographers. Now, I'm gonna pass the question off to you. What are your thoughts on the British Society of Cinematographers nominations? How does this affect your cinematography predictions? Let me know in the comments below what you think, and be sure you hit that subscribe button, because if you don't, Edward Lockman's gonna shoot you with a camera.